streaming show keeping you informed on the day-to-day news. Live from West Bloomfield, we're bringing you the news, updates, and information impacting communities around Michigan. Join our host, Tyler Kieft, as he talks with community members, business leaders, and professional experts about the stories that impact you. You're watching the Megacast on Civic Center TV. The West Bloomfield Youth Assistants will be recognizing local youth for their volunteer service, personal growth, and leadership. Join us as schools, hospitals, and religious organizations nominate the up-and-comers in your community. Show your pride for our future. The Youth Recognition Awards, May 10th at 6 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Middle School. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
There are many different kinds of noses. Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
How can you get involved with upcoming elections? West Bloomfield Township wants you to join the ranks as an election inspector. Get trained on using polling equipment, proper procedures for handling ballots, and more to keep the voting process smooth and safe. If you're interested, go to wbtownship.org for more information or call the clerk's office with the number provided on screen. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
I'm Steve Eiserman of the Detroit Red Wings, and I think every child in Michigan deserves a safe, healthy, and happy childhood. Can we build a state where Children Trust Michigan isn't just a name, but something our kids believe? Please support Children Trust Michigan as the voice for children and families by visiting the website to learn more.
Ronnie started doing prescription pills at the age of 15. And by 19, he died. If your child is struggling with drug use, try not to be too proud to reach out for help. Don't be worried about what the neighbor will think or your family. Just get your child the help they need. Sometimes it's the hard road to take, but the hard road is nothing compared to living with the fact that your child is no longer with you.
There's hope and help at drugfree.org.
Watch Civic Center TV with our brand new live captions. To turn on live captions, go to civiccentertv.com and click Watch Live. In your web browser, click on the Options tab in the top right and find the Accessibilities tab. Then just switch on live captions to heighten your enjoyment of our local programming. Thank you so much for watching Civic Center TV.
Hello, nose. My nose knows when somebody uses the bathroom. Mom, Polly didn't flush. Ooh, I smell cookies.
I smell an A+.
How could my nose be running when it stays on my face?
Our noses know if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Oakland County and the state of Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines on our local news page on civiccentertv.com. Our top story today comes from Eileen Wingblad at the Oakland Press. A big honor has come the way of the Birmingham Fire Department this week, earning themselves a Class 2 rating by the Insurance Services Office, their first upgrade in this regard since they received a Class 3 certification 18 years ago. This is also big news for residents and businesses, as this upgrade in the rating of city emergency services will surely impact their insurance rates, both on the homeowning front and the business owning front, knowing that local fire emergencies are handled not only with great care, but also with some of the best in class service that you can find. Said Fire Chief Paul Wells, quote, "I'm extremely proud of the department's dedicated personnel who put in the hard work that is required to achieve the training and preparedness scores on this review. I would also like to thank the residents, city staff, and commissioners for their support to help grow the department and provide the equipment necessary to meet our department goals," end closed quote. Good news out of Birmingham, but really a good news for everybody in our local area, because with the Oakway Partnership Mutual Aid Agreement between Birmingham and many of our other local communities, especially here in the lower parts of Oakland County and in the Lakes area, that means even better service for all of our departments as they provide support to one another. So if there's a lot of action happening, let's say in Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham will help provide support to the Bloomfield Hills Fire Department. West Bloomfield will provide support to Bloomfield Hills and help them fill in their needs as needed. And that happens all throughout the local area. And so having another department like Birmingham get this upgrade in their rating to a Class 2 rating now from Class 3 only improves the overall services of our emergency departments, especially on the fire rescue side and EMS side, all across the local area. So good news, not only for the Birmingham Fire Department and, of course, the residents and the businesses and the city government in Birmingham, but all of us here in the local area in case of an emergency. At one time, you hope to never see them. They'll ultimately be there and providing great service to hopefully get everybody, including yourself, out in case of fire or other emergencies. So congratulations to our friends at the Birmingham Fire Department. Also making headlines today on our local news page on CivicCenterTV.com from Clara Hendrickson at the Detroit Free Press. There's good news on the tax front for lower income families in Michigan, and that good news just got a little bit better. Following the 2022 tax deadline just a little bit over 10 days ago, well, actually 10 days ago on the dot from today, lawmakers in Michigan's Senate approved a bill on Thursday that would advance the execution of the federal earned income tax credit that is currently scheduled to go into effect next year with your 2023 taxes. In Michigan, this credit is known as the Working Families Tax Credit and is set at a portion of the federal credit of the same kind. Senate Bill 144 would permit those who who claimed the earned income tax credit on their 2022 taxes to claim the credit this year only in its expanded output. The state estimated this would cost approximately $441 million per a report from the Senate Fiscal Agency. That exact number, $441.6 million, was their exact estimation. And that is linked, and more information from that agency and from that report is linked in this article. Same thing goes with Senate Bill 144, so you can read all the materials you need to know on that front. While support was shown on both sides of the political aisle, some leaders in Lansing were not so satisfied with how the advance was executed in Thursday's vote and in the process that led to that vote. Senator Joe Bellino, a Republican from Monroe, said, quote, "I am frustrated at how long it has taken to get this over the finish line, despite repeated bipartisan votes. We're right back where we started in January, voting on a first chamber bill that can't become law for several more weeks at a minimum," and closed quote. So some good news potentially for those in some of the lower income tax brackets that have claimed either the Michigan Working Families Tax Credit and or the federal earned income tax credit. You may get a little bit of an advance on that and see a little bit more coming back with your tax returns from 2022 should you make that claim and make that advance claim. Not entirely official just yet, but certainly could be some really good news as we get through the remainder of tax season, as those returns start to come in direct deposit or through checks in the mail, and so on and so forth. Plenty of more information in this article on our website on CivicCenterTV.com on our local news page. Additionally, making headlines today from U Stella U at Bridge, Michigan, as we discussed on Monday right here on the Megacast, Representative Noah Arbit from the 20th District here in Michigan's House of Representatives introduced new legislation alongside Attorney General Dana Nessel yesterday that would amend the state's anti-hate crime law. The new set of bills would provide a renewed definition of what a hate crime is, expanding discriminatory acts to also include those being done on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and more categories as well. Well beyond simply race or religion, as has typically been the basis of what is defined as a hate crime in the past. Representative Arbit told reporters on Thursday, quote, "Hate crimes are always committed to send a message. Now it is our chance to send an even stronger message in return, that we will not tolerate hate violence anywhere in the state of Michigan," and closed quote. For reference, just on the statistical side of things, to see just how much of a growing problem hate crimes are across our union. For reference, the FBI reported a record number of hate crimes in 2021 across our union, and in 2022, in particular, anti-Semitic hate crimes also reached their highest level with just under 3,700 incidents across the nation. In Michigan, hate crimes are also on the rise, although not at the same slope necessarily as the federal metrics, with 524 hate crimes reported in Michigan in 2019, that being an increase from 373 about 10 years ago in 2010, but also less than what was reported a year before that in 2008, and those metrics are provided in this article. This package, sponsored by Representative Arbit, whose district includes our area here around our flagship station, Civic Center TV in Greater West Bloomfield and the Lakes area, would also cover ethnic intimidation law updates as well, something that has remained stagnant since the late 80s. In fact, that was 1988 that those were last updated. All of this was discussed earlier on this week. We talked quite extensively with Representative Arbit for several minutes on Monday afternoon about this very issue, about this legislation, and that was, of course, before the announcement came on the 27th on Thursday alongside Attorney General Dana Nessel, but still plenty more to go into about what is in this package of legislation, what may be covered should this legislation pass and be signed by the governor, and redefine what it means to have perpetrated a hate crime in the state of Michigan, and what the punishment will be for those acts of hate against people of different religions, different ethnic backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and more, as was proposed. And that full interview is on demand on our website on civiccentertv.com/megacast. Just click on the Watch Full Interviews link, and you'll be able to scroll down and find our interview with Noah Arbit from Monday of this week on April 24th. Finally, making headlines today on our local news page from MLive's Benjamin Raven, some pleasant and quizzical surprises at the NFL Draft's first round on Thursday night for the Detroit Lions. After the Houston Texans made a huge splash early on, jumping up to acquire the number 3 overall pick after already selecting quarterback C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State at number 2. One of the alleged key targets for our Lions fell off the board. Alabama linebacker and defensive edge Will Anderson Jr. was selected number 3 overall by the Houston Texans in a move that was both shrewd on their part and calculated and well executed. Helped another team, that being the Arizona Cardinals, load up with some picks, including Houston's first-round pick next year, which could also be a top 5 or top 10 pick. But also put a lot of other teams in a position where they needed to prepare themselves to potentially move out of their selection. Then another surprise came just a couple picks later at number 5, when yet another potential Lions target, defensive back Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois, was picked up by the Seattle Seahawks. Many expected them to go with a defensive lineman or even a quarterback at their pick at number 5. Maybe they would go and reach for a guy like Hendon Hooker. They'd go for quarterback Will Levis, who's out of Kentucky and highly regarded as being an early to mid first round pick potentially at the absolute worst, and also still at this time remains unpicked as we head into day 2 of the NFL draft and into the second round. He wasn't even gone there. Another one that was rumored to potentially be going to the Seattle Seahawks was Jalen Carter out of Georgia. He also didn't go there. Instead, they went and surprised some people, adding some depth to their secondary by selecting Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. That left the Lions at the number 6 overall pick with a choice. Jalen Carter out of Georgia, the defensive tackle with a whole lot of talent, but a lot of red flags surrounding his work ethic, maturity, and decision-making. Tyree Wilson out of Texas A&M, another high-motor, excellent technical defensive end that would have been a great complement to Aiden Hutchinson in that Lions front, or a surprise pick or potentially trading down. In the end, Brad Holmes and company decided to hit the phones, ultimately making a deal with the Arizona Cardinals to give up the number 6 overall pick in exchange for the Cardinals' number 12 overall pick and additional picks both in this draft and next year, ending up the Lions having several of the top 50 selections in this year's draft. But that wasn't the only surprise that the Lions had in store, and it wasn't the last one of the evening. The biggest one came at number 12 overall, with many targets still on the board, including another defensive back that was highly regarded out of Oregon in Christian Gonzalez, as well as another defensive end that could have been a great complement as well to Aiden Hutchinson and Miles Murphy out of Clemson, as well as some skill position players such as wide receivers Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State and Quentin Johnson out of TCU, as well as Zay Flowers, a very speedy and shifty wide receiver out of Boston College. Instead, the Lions surprised everybody and selected a running back at number 12, and a running back that wasn't expected to even go potentially in the first round, as they took Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama at the number 12 overall pick. Many questioned that from the jump, including Lions fans on site. You could hear some audible groans from the Lions faithful in the front row at the NFL draft in Kansas City last night when Jahmyr Gibbs was selected out of Alabama. But Brad Holmes and company, they love him. They think that he's going to be a great fit in this offense. The question that really comes with that is, typically in the last 5 to 10 years or so, picking running backs in the first round has been quite unconventional, because the shelf life of running backs and linebackers and other highly physical ground and pound positions like that in the National Football League tends to be relatively short. And when you have a chance to go get a guy that could potentially play 10 plus years in the NFL, or someone who may be highly effective for 5 or 6 in a running back, that adds a lot of questions. But the good news on the Jahmyr Gibbs front is he also is an excellent running back in the receiving front on those short passes that Jared Goff tends to be much more effective at, the Lions quarterback. So could also kind of take out two birds with one stone, two birds with one pick. In this case, allowing Jahmyr Gibbs to be a complement to David Montgomery and potentially DeAndre Swift, although there's rumors that Swift could be traded for a second or third round pick over the weekend. And if he is, then there's a clear role there for Jahmyr Gibbs. And if not, there's still a relatively clear role for Jahmyr Gibbs. He can ease into being an every down running back or a 3-down running back for the Lions in the near future, but also get out in the receiving corps to provide a complement, especially with Jameson Williams suspended for the first 6 games of the season due to violating the NFL's gambling policy. My apologies, a brief excuse me there to take a sip of water. After Williams had bet on other sports games on Lions facility, on the Lions grounds, which is of course against the NFL's gambling policy, and led to him being suspended for 6 games. Other picks last night for the Detroit Lions: at number 18, they selected linebacker Jack Campbell, no relation to Dan Campbell, out of Iowa, the linebacker, also very highly regarded, but another guy that many thought the Lions could potentially get later on in that first round. They traded down again, got some more assets, or possibly even picked up early on in the second round, especially with their newly acquired picks this season. But plenty more intrigue and certainly more drama I would expect at the NFL draft tonight and over the weekend as the saga continues, and the Lions have a lot more drafting to do and a lot more holes to cover in their roster. But still, the benefit is that you have a very talented roster, you have a very promising roster, and so filling it out in this draft is a lot easier than trying to fit those needs that are gaping holes necessarily on your roster, as has been the tendency for the Lions over the past, well, let's just say the entire history of the Lions in the Super Bowl era. So some good news still alongside all the surprises from last night. All of these headlines are making news today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page, along with links to COVID-19 updates and information, as well as other public health info from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great program ahead on today's edition of the Megacast. Stay tuned. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll have all the latest on the markets and the economy with Michael Greiner from Oakland University. Stay tuned. This is the Megacast.
There are many different kinds of noses. Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4.
It's that time of year, Lakers. Gather round to honor our community's volunteers at the 51st Annual Michigan Week Awards. Countless members of the communities of Orchard Lake, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and West Bloomfield give their time and talent daily without regard for recognition. Catch the live broadcast May 12th at 7 a.m. on CivicCenterTV.com or on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
I'm Steve Eiserman of the Detroit Red Wings, and I think every child in Michigan deserves a safe, healthy, and happy childhood. Can we build a state where children trust Michigan isn't just a name, but something our kids believe? Please support Children Trust Michigan as the voice for children and families by visiting the website to learn more.
Like what you see? Beautiful works of art, masterworks of metal, and accomplishments of artistry will be on display near you. All kinds of artists from all walks of life come together to celebrate their skill and appreciate their work's beauty. Hot Works presents the 2023 Orchard Lake Fine Art Show. Stop by July 29th and 30th between 2 and 10 p.m. between Powers and Daly off of Orchard Lake Road.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important.
And now the same is true in the face of flu.
Influenza has the power to infect millions.
But it's easy to protect yourself, your family, and your community.
The flu vaccine is safe and effective. And with COVID-19 still around,
it's essential. Together we can face flu season head on.
Visit michigan.gov/flu.
Many people are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with mental wellness these days. So be kind to your mind. Give yourself permission to breathe. Share your feelings. You are not alone. Have hope. Talk to a Stay Well counselor for free confidential help 24/7 through the COVID-19 hotline.
Ronnie started doing prescription pills at the age of 15, and by 19, he died. If your child is struggling with drug use, try not to be too proud to reach out for help. Don't be worried about what the neighbor will think or your family. Just get your child the help they need. Sometimes it's the hard road to take, but the hard road is nothing compared to living with the fact that your child is no longer with you.
There's hope and help at drugfree.org.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Oakland County and the state of Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program by visiting our website on CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. You'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State and here in the Oakland County area, and find all of our full shows and each individual segment on demand as well. CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. Joining us now on the program, as he does each and every week, to talk about the latest in the markets and the economy, both here in Michigan and across the U.S., is Michael Greiner, an assistant professor of management at Oakland University's School of Business Administration. Michael, thanks for being with us.
It's
great to be back, Tyler. Happy Friday.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show today. Happy Friday to you as well. Let's start off here in our local area in Metro Detroit. We've talked this week with a couple of real estate experts on both the commercial side and on the residential side. Here in Metro Detroit, some interesting news in the commercial real estate market. While there's a lot of interest in the Metro Detroit area, there's still a high vacancy rate amongst commercial properties here in our local area. Talk about that metric right now and just what that disconnect may be between the interest in coming to this area and people actually going for some of those properties.
Yeah, I was just looking at the data some more this morning, and it's kind of scary a little bit. For the Detroit metro area right now, our vacancy rate is 11.39%, and we had a big increase of, I believe, almost 4% compared to pre-COVID, and that puts us at this point 19th out of 134 metro areas in terms of vacancy rate. So we're talking a pretty high vacancy rate, especially when compared with the rest of the country, and we've got a couple of things going on right now in the commercial real estate market. Of course, on the one hand, you've got what's kind of essentially a recession going on in real estate right now, largely driven by the fact that you have had these increases in interest rates. Now, that recession hasn't impacted residential real estate the way it has in commercial real estate, for the simple fact that we've got a shortage in residential real estate in this country. There's a lot of pent-up demand right now. So as a result of that, even though you're seeing less construction and higher mortgage interest rates and that type of thing, people are still buying homes, and so that's and people are still renting apartments, and so that's been driving up the cost of those things anyway. What you're seeing with the commercial real estate, though, is a very different picture for the simple fact that technology has changed, and we've seen that especially come true after the experience that we had with the COVID pandemic. More people are working at home. We now have things like Dropbox and OneDrive and Zoom, like we're on right now. And people are able to meet virtually and really have entire work relationships as if they're at the office when really they're working from home, as we all know. And so we've seen a pretty dramatic increase in the amount of people working from home. And of course, what that means then is fewer people in the big office buildings in downtown areas, whether it be in Detroit or Troy or Southfield or wherever in this area. And as a result of that, we're seeing higher vacancy rates at the same time as a lot of these commercial landlords are dealing with the fact that the interest rates are going up, so they're having trouble refinancing what they need to, and there's a big chunk of commercial real estate that needs to be refinanced in the next year or so. And then on top of that, you've got the situation happening with these mid-sized banks, like we had Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, and what's going on with Republic Bank right now. These banks tend to be big lenders in the commercial real estate area. So that's making it harder for them to get loans. And then on top of that, you've got the whole situation happening in retail, where more and more the brick and mortar retailers are not doing so well because of competition from online retailers. And as a result of that, the commercial real estate market right now is in big trouble. And as I say, right now in Detroit, we're certainly feeling it.
So is that more on the office space side or on the retail side? Are there differences in those two areas?
There are, but they're related because of the fact that a lot of the time, it's considered a single market essentially. Although there are distinctions within it. Certainly there's certain space that can be used for either office space or retail space and can be changed relatively quickly. One of the things that we've seen happening has been a move toward perhaps trying to change some commercial real estate into being residential. We're seeing that, for example, in New York, where still among apartments, there's very high demand. But with commercial real estate, they're doing even worse than we are here in Detroit, where a lot of people basically are not coming into the city anymore to do their jobs. And what they've found is it's incredibly difficult to do that because of the fact that you've got these much different standards when you're building something for residential real estate than when you're building something for commercial real estate. And those standards really aren't easy to shift. It's much easier to shift when you're, shifting from, a retailer to an office space. And we saw that, for example, with WeWork and a lot of these kind of co-working spaces out there, where they're able to take buildings that might not necessarily have been originally intended for office space and are relatively easy to change into office space. But when you start talking about trying to change it into residential real estate, it's a much more difficult situation.
We're joined by Michael Greiner on today's edition of the Megacast. He's with Oakland University in their School of Business Administration, where he serves as an assistant professor of management, joining us as he does each and every week to talk about the latest in the markets and the economy. All this being considered with the current state of the economy, with real estate, both on the commercial and the residential side, having fluctuating prices and going between being a buyer's market and a seller's market. The cost of living in Metro Detroit continues to go up as time goes on, and these conditions are certainly not helping. And it was a really interesting report done with Fox 2 this week here in the Metro Detroit area about what it means to actually be in that middle class category nowadays in Metro Detroit. So where has that definition shifted?
Well, what's interesting is in the city of Detroit in particular, we actually have the second lowest, essentially, entry point for being in the middle class. And what that has to, and the way they calculate what is the middle class, I think is relevant to talk about for 1 second here. And basically what they do is that they figure out the median income per household. So what is the median that's earned? Now, this is not the average, because with an average, you'll see where somebody who has huge income will throw off the average, where it will seem like, for example, you have much higher income than you really do. Like, for example, if there were a group of us standing in a room and suddenly Jeff Bezos walked into it, suddenly the average income would dramatically increase. The median, though, wouldn't increase by much, because basically that's where you count half is higher, half is lower. And so you may have some real outliers on one end or the other, but they don't throw off that middle number very much. So then what you do is you look at what is 2/3 of that number, that's the low end, and what is essentially double of that number, and that's the high end. So in Metro Detroit itself, the low end, the place where you essentially are considered part of the middle class, is as low as I believe $24,000, which is pretty low. So what that reflects is the fact that the median income in the city of Detroit is very low. That said, though, when you look at Michigan as a whole, the median, essentially the low point for entry into it is $42,000, and it goes up to $126,996. So a lot of us are who felt like we're in the middle class, probably are in the middle class based upon that number. The interesting thing about this, though, is it just shows the distinction that you still have in the city of Detroit itself, where you tend to have much, much lower incomes, generally speaking. Again, the median is much lower than you do in the rest of the state. And so it speaks to the fact that still there's a lot of economic development that really needs to be done in the city of Detroit before it really can kind of come back to the essentially the kind of economic activity and really the level of city that it once was.
And as we talk about that, and we're thinking about ways to help that middle class and those that are in the classes, socioeconomic classes below that category also, ultimately that does in some ways come back to tax incentives to help those individuals out, particularly on those property taxes in those lower income or middle class areas. And so this week, some controversy or controversy lately arising in Detroit over tax incentives, particularly for developers, and in particular for the very controversial, continuously controversial District Detroit. You have a unique perspective on this, having been a government worker and worked on tax incentives in the past in your career. Give us that perspective on what's going on here and what really is driving that controversy in the District Detroit.
Yeah, and I can totally see where people are coming from with their concerns about this, because they say, hey, these people are billionaires. Why do they need more tax incentives? And of course, we're talking about the Ilitch family and some of the other very wealthy people who've invested in the city of Detroit and deserve a lot of credit for that. But the fact of the matter is that in many of these cases, these investments wouldn't happen if it weren't for these tax incentives. Some of the areas that we're talking about being redeveloped are what are called brownfields. And what that means is that these are areas that were previously developed, but now are basically sitting vacant. And so the question is, can you redevelop them? Well, you would think, you've already got water and sewer and electric and all these advantages of being in the city, you would think it would be easier to redevelop a property in the city than develop a new property out in the suburbs, something that we call the green fields, where they haven't had that prior development. And interestingly enough, kind of surprising to many people, that's just not the case. As it turns out, it's much, much more expensive to redevelop these areas in the city that are considered brownfields than these green fields. Reason being that there's a lot of remediation that needs to take place. You would be amazed some of the stuff that is buried under the ground in Metro Detroit or Warren or Pontiac or any of these cities in this area for that reason, where you're dealing with these older communities. And as a result, whenever these places are going to be redeveloped, there's this whole process that has to be gone through to clear out the property and essentially make it safe for redevelopment. And that is a process that you just don't need to go through when you're dealing with greenfields, these new spaces. So economically, there's an incentive for businesses essentially to construct their properties outside of the city in these greenfields rather than in the older brownfield areas. What's more is you have to remember, we're not just competing here in Detroit among different communities in Michigan. We're actually competing in Michigan nationally and even internationally when we're talking about some of these incentives. On a national basis, you know, my former boss used to talk all the time about the fact that during the Depression, there was the Tennessee Valley Authority, which was basically paid for in large part by taxes from states like Michigan. But what it did is it made it so that states down south were able to get much, much less expensive energy and electric than we're able to get here in Michigan. The result has been that a lot of businesses have decided, hey, we're going to move down south. And a big justification for that is the fact that energy prices are lower down there than they are here. Well, in many cases, we're the ones who finance that. And you can see where that gets frustrating. So we're in this competition among other states where we need to offer some kind of financial incentive to say to them, hey, even though there might be this advantage on the energy side, there's still an economic benefit to locating here in Michigan. And then finally, we're dealing with a global competition right now, as we well know. You know, we've certainly been exposed to the fact that businesses now can move to China, they can move to Vietnam, they can certainly move to Mexico and even Canada. And each of these places offers certain benefits economically to the businesses to locate there. So again, we need to be competing on this level. So I, you know, on the one hand, I can see where people are concerned about, oh, tax incentives going to the very wealthy. But on the other hand, I also, again, from the perspective of the communities, and this was something that, despite concerns of residents, was passed by an 8-to-1 vote at the Detroit City Council, I understand, you know, because of the fact that they understand that if they don't give these incentives, the investment won't happen at all. And that's much worse for the community than offering some of these incentives. And then something else, too, that I think is a little bit of a misnomer is the fact that when these incentives are offered, they never mean that these businesses will be paying less in taxes. All they mean is that for the new value that they add to the property, that value will be taxed at a lower rate. So there'll still be more taxes coming in. It just won't be coming in at the same rate if there were no tax incentives. And so again, the communities have to look at it from the perspective of, look, we're either going to give these incentives and at least get essentially, you know, half of what we're looking for, as opposed to not giving these incentives and getting nothing. And that can be a big risk that these communities run. So generally speaking, these incentives are a very valuable tool that most communities have. And again, as you say, when I worked for the city of Warren, we certainly were aggressive in offering them, and they were very valuable to us.
And lastly, Michael, as we're trying to attract new businesses to Michigan, new people to Michigan, something that the state's been receiving a lot of praise for in that regard is their incentives, particularly as they're attracting climate investment here in the state of Michigan. Let's talk about that for a moment and just what sort of incentives are being offered that are so enticing to people outside of Michigan to come into the Great Lakes state.
Yeah, and that's a great question because you know, again, it speaks to just what we were talking about, which is that in Michigan, we're involved in a national competition for these investments. We're also involved in a global competition. And the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed by Congress a year or so ago, is probably one of the most poorly named statutes in history. You know, it was named that way for politics, and we don't need to get into all that. But fundamentally what this legislation was, is it was a climate piece of legislation. And the way that it's trying to address the climate issue is by offering tax incentives to get businesses to essentially invest in climate-related businesses here in the United States. Okay, so on a national scale now, we're much more competitive relative to other countries. And I just saw another article actually this morning talking about how Europe, where you would think that they'd be far ahead of the United States with some of these climate businesses, given the fact that, number one, they have a little bit more of a history of it than we do. Number two, with the war in Ukraine going on, there's been this incredible push to kind of get Europe to back away from fossil fuels, which of course are supplied by Russia, and to look to alternative forms of energy. But actually what we've seen is that despite this history there and despite this push for cleaner energy, much of it is being shifted to the United States. And again, this has to do with the fact that we are being aggressive in offering these incentives here. So then once we're able to get these businesses to locate to the United States, then it becomes this competition between different states. And I can tell you, some of the states that are very aggressive in offering tax incentives to get businesses to locate there include such southern states as Georgia and North Carolina, which again already have that advantage because of the fact that we paid for them to be able to deliver cheap electricity. But third in line among all the states in terms of offering tax incentives is Michigan, because we understand that there is this global competition and this competition among the states to see where businesses are going to locate. And as a result, we're offering over $2 billion of incentives to get businesses to locate here. And there's already a pretty strong indication that that has attracted some clean investments here to Michigan, because the one thing we can't forget is we do have one real advantage here. And what that has to do is the fact that we have an educated workforce. We have people who know how to build cars, we have a high percentage of automotive and energy engineers who understand how this works. And so that ends up being a real advantage to locating here in Michigan. We've got the people who know how to do this stuff. And if we're able to essentially, kind of narrow that gap, that financial gap that you may see between here and some of the other states or other countries, then I think we provide a very attractive package for a lot of businesses to locate here. And we're really starting to see that start to pay some dividends.
Well, Michael, we appreciate you giving us some insight on all these different topics of interest, certainly here in Michigan on the economic side, on the socioeconomic side, and on incentives trying to get more people into the state of Michigan, more businesses here to drive our economy going forward. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your take on the everything going on in the NFL right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the Lions go from here after a very interesting first night of the NFL draft. Thank you.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Thank you very much, Michael.
Have a good one.
We'll take a break here on the Megacast. On the other side, one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported on the Shared Detroit platform. This is the Megacast.
Watch Civic Center TV with our brand new live captions. To turn on live captions, go to civiccentertv.com and click Watch Live. In your web browser, click on the Options tab in the top right and find the Accessibilities tab. Then just switch on live captions to heighten your enjoyment of our local programming. Thank you so much for watching Civic Center TV. Stop by West Bloomfield Town Hall June 14th and get your health in check at the 14th Annual Greater West Bloomfield Health and Wellness Fair. Over 40 businesses, organizations, and vendors take the time to showcase healthy practices, tips, and resources for the community. Young or old, there's something for everyone and everybody. 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Wednesday, June 14th, the 14th Annual Greater West Bloomfield Health and Wellness Fair. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
When you have a gambling problem, you have a money problem. Don't let your gambling cause you financial hardship. If you or someone you love is struggling with gambling, we can help. Get free confidential counseling and win your life back. Learn more at michigan.gov/problemgambling.
How can you get involved with upcoming elections? West Bloomfield Township wants you to join the ranks as an election inspector. Get trained on using polling equipment, proper procedures for handling ballots, and more to keep the voting process smooth and safe. If you're interested, go to wbtownship.org for more information or call the clerk's office with the number provided on screen. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
1 in 4 Michigan homes has high levels of radon, a naturally occurring radioactive gas known to cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter where you live or what type of home you have. You won't even know it's there unless you test. So don't wait. Testing is cheap and easy. And if there's a problem, it's simple to fix. Visit michigan.gov/radon to learn more.
We took action. Will you?
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
The West Bloomfield Youth Assistants will be recognizing local youth for their volunteer service, personal growth, and leadership. Join us as schools, hospitals, and religious organizations nominate the up-and-comers in your community. Show your pride for our future. The Youth Recognition Awards, May 10th at 6 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Middle School. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Hello, nose. My nose knows is when somebody uses the bathroom. Mom, Polly didn't flush. Ooh, I smell cookies. I smell an A+. How could my nose be running when it stays on my face?
Our noses know if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Let's relish these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
There are many different kinds of noses. Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4.
It's that time of year, Lakers. Gather round to honor our community's volunteers at the 51st Annual Michigan Week Awards. Countless members of the communities of Orchard Lake, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and West Bloomfield give their time and talent daily without regard for recognition. Catch the live broadcast May 12th at 7 a.m. on CivicCenterTV.com. or on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.